All right, I think we will get going. Thank you all for joining us here today. We're talking about systems change and particularly addressing racism, bias, inclusion through a systems change view. So my name is Anjum. I work for Inclusive Aotearoa Collective Tahono, and I'm also a member of the SASS group, and we'll talk about the group in a little bit, but I'm going to start first with our karakia to welcome you all in. Ko te kawa o runga, ko te kawa o raro, ko te kawa ora, ko te kawa ora. E rongo e whakaerehia ki runga, turu turu o whiti, whakamaua ki a tina, huie, tai ki e. Right. So just quick rundown of how the session's going to run today. So we've just had the opening karakia and welcome to you all. And then I will just give a bit of background around the SASS group, who the members are, about our paper, Voices from the Frontlines, and what systems change is for those of you who aren't familiar. And then we'll go into our lovely panelists and I'll introduce them and give them the opportunity to speak. And then we will give you time to ask them some questions. So, and then close up, letting you know what we've got coming next. And then yes, a wrap up. So our Zoom kōrero is recorded today so that we're able to share it with other people who weren't able to make it. We're going to ask everyone if you could please put yourself on mute so that there's no background noise, and use the chat function to pop in your questions. And so I'll be keeping an eye on the chat and making sure that we do address the questions that are coming up. If you're able to turn on your video, then please do. No pressure. I can understand it's lunchtime, so you might want to be eating. And please do feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. So, SASS, this is SASS, our Systems Change Advocacy Support and Solidarity Network. And these are the wonderful wahine who are part of the group. We started the group in 2022 and it came out because we knew how tough it is to work in systems change, how it can be really isolating. Some of us were feeling the stress that comes with working in this area. So we decided to get together with a group of us, and we wanted to make sure that we had a diverse group of wahine to support each other, to figure out how to do this better and to share what we knew with the wider community. So hence these webinars. So after our first retreat, which was in 2022, we had taken notes. We'd had wonderful workshopping from Te Manako, and they helped us to get the basis of this paper. And would really recommend you to have a look at the paper if you haven't. The link will be in the chat. And it is talking about what are the pressures working in systems change, and what are some pathways to do this work better. And we have recommendations for practitioners working in systems change, for funders and for other supporters, and with checklists at the back of the paper. So yeah, please do have a look at that. So the webinars, what we decided is that we would do a webinar for each of the 5 pathways in the paper. And so we've had the first 2 webinars and they're available online, and we can let you know where they are. But we're on pathway 3 today, which is around addressing racism, bias and exclusion. And we will be having 2 more webinars in this series, so look for those coming up. Now, I think a lot of you may have been to our previous webinars, and so you'll understand what systems change is. I've just copied some definitions of systems change that we included in the paper. But really, what we're talking about is not just, dealing with the symptoms of a problem, not just providing food to people who are hungry, because we do need to do that. But thinking about how we can structure our society, our governing institutions, our private sector and not-for-profit institutions, so that our society works in a way that we don't have these problems coming up in the first place. So that's why we talk about working upstream rather than downstream. While we recognise that you still need to have the downstream stuff until the system is changed. So this is pathway 3, which the group talked about in 2022, around how many of our systems are developed with a worldview that has been racist, has excluded people for various reasons, and has biases, and because it comes from a certain worldview. And challenging that worldview changes over time, but we still know that there's plenty of bias and exclusion in the system. And when we're talking about bias and exclusion and racism, we want to include all the different types of wonderful people there are in our country. So whether it be our rainbow communities, our disability community, whether it's socioeconomic diversity, all the various things. But of course, where we started with was recognising the lack of understanding and commitment to te tiriti o Waitangi and the central place of Te Ao Māori in Aotearoa. And given our current environment, and we thought this in 2022, it's even more so in that space now. So some examples, I thought I'd just at this point give a couple of examples of what systemic bias, exclusion and racism looks like. So personal examples for me. So for example, the Christchurch mosque attacks in 2019. When we engaged with the Royal Commission afterwards, and when we looked at the security system, and when you look at the Royal Commission report, it showed that our security services across the board were putting a huge focus on the Muslim community and not looking at white supremacist or other forms of extremism. And that, because they did it and because the system was designed that way, it made it very easy to surveil our community and to look at our community and to pick people out that they needed to focus on, where there was this whole area of extremism going on that they didn't want to address, and they didn't address, and their systems weren't designed to address, which is why they didn't catch the guy before doing his terrorist act. Now, they may still not have caught him, but the fact is that the system was designed in such a way that they weren't even looking. Another example, I'm really interested in the online harm space. So when we think about the way that the platforms are designed, the code, the algorithms, the way that they're designed to promote and make viral outrage and hateful comments a lot more than they are with positive comments. To me, that's a systemic issue. It's an issue of design of the platform and the values that we into that design. So those are just a couple of quick examples of the kind of things that we're talking about. So we put forward in the paper, and I won't go through these now because I really want to hear from our wonderful panelists, but we put through some things that we thought people working in systems change should be doing. And and that particularly is about being lifelong learners, and particularly about te tiriti and te ao Māori, but listening deeply and so on. So let me move now to our wonderful panelists who've agreed to join us today. So we have Faumuina, Dr. Arama Rata, and B as well. So I will introduce each of the speakers as they speak. So our first speaker is Faumuina Felolini Maria Tafuna'i, who was born in Otautahi, Christchurch, and her family hails from Mulifa Whanua, and a few other places. And she's the founder and CEO of Flying Geese Pro, and also founded the Flying Geese Trust. In 2014, Faumuina developed a wayfinding framework under the guidance of navigator Aotearoa Barclay Kerr, and I can vouch for that framework, having had Faumuina run that with us back in 2021. It's an excellent framework. She's an ocean voyager herself, and also a poet, author, playwright, and performer. So I'll hand over to you, Faumuina, and stop sharing my screen.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi mai oha I tēnei wā. Ka noho hau I Otautahi. Ai ka mihi ki ngā tuariri, ngā tahi hoki, mō o koutou manaakitanga o tātou ngā tangata moana, ngā tangata tauiwi, ngā tangata tiriti. Ka noho I konei I o koutou motu. So kia ora, my name's Faumuina, and I guess this whole space around racism and systems and living in racist systems is one, that's been part of my entire life, really. Growing up as a young Samoan girl in Christchurch and having to, from a very early age, answer the question of where did I come from, a question that was asked of me, but not everyone else. And when I would ask my Pākehā friends, and often their parents, which is an interesting thing, I think, that parents ask young children, where do you come from? When I asked them, they didn't know, and they felt really affronted by that question, actually. So kind of knowing that you're different, and then going through systems where I guess being viewed as possibly like not that bright, not that not having a future in certain areas, to the point I think that the self-belief that you have to have as you navigate these types of systems is one that you have to create for yourself. And although you might meet success, it's success despite a lot of barriers. And I think for me, having gone through that and then having a child and watching that child go through these systems, and then I think when you start messing with your children, then you're like, that's enough. Like, I've grown up through this. I didn't have a lot of control, but now I can exercise some control. And so one of those things I think Mike wanted to talk about today was a program that we created called Weddle, which is an entrepreneurship program. So when we moved from the Waikato to Christchurch, and we went to one of the, highly regarded schools here, a Catholic boys' school, and my son, who's 6'3", all the questions were, can he play rugby? And at that time, he could paddle whakaaro, never had played rugby in his life. And so when he said to them, oh, yeah, I'll give it a go, they lost interest in him as a person. So there were no more conversations about your, what kind of future, what could we build with you? And then I think because we'd come from Waikato and we were deeply embedded there, with whakaaro, with pingitanga, with Waikato, so the way that he could see the difference when you using is not quite the right word, but I guess living in Te Ao Māori rather than cherry picking, you know, a haka for your rugby team or a karakia to open a meeting, but then there's no other kind of embracing of, you know, of mana whenua or tangata whenua. He could spot those things. But one of the big things for me is that when he was in Waikato at a Māori kaupapa school, the entire school did entrepreneurship because they viewed these children as having the potential to be future business owners and entrepreneurs. And then when we moved down here, that opportunity wasn't afforded to them. But then I checked with all of my nieces and nephews, and none of them had been approached. A couple of them had been head girls. So, you know, they were definitely... you know, were well regarded in different areas. And so because of that, I created Whittle. And and to me, that's about hacking a racist school system that doesn't view our children, you know, children of colour, to have that potential or interest in them. So we started that, I think that's about 4 years ago now. And I think when I talk to people that essentially this is an anti-racism course, you know, that this is the way that I could see that we could hack a system. And because it's entrepreneurship, it's incredibly attractive to schools to have this course come through. But at the same time, what we really try and teach them is that your culture is key to your success, and not to be ashamed of where you come from, to embrace being Māori and Pacific, and that there are principles, and for me, that come from voyaging, that can be transposed onto land, and you can, I don't know, embed them into your character. So that was probably one of my first, you know, attempts at going upstream. And then later we developed Wayfinding for Life, a suicide prevention program. What we started to do then is pull in teachers, because there was a compulsory student-teacher ratio to take on to whakaaro. And what we're trying to do then is expand that ecosystem, you know, this kind of trying to systems change approach from being in the classroom, because now teachers were learning alongside these students about Pacific history in ways that they didn't know before. And they could also see, you know, like sailing is a great leveler in terms of your ability. So it doesn't matter if you're an adult or if you're a teenager, the whole thing is that actually you will learn, and you're tested all the time, physically tested on your knowledge. So, you know, so we're trying to expand those things, those ways into schools by expanding who are the kids in contact with. It's their principals, it's their teachers, and of course then their families. Another area that I guess some of you might have read or come across is 17 Habits of a Valued Treaty Partner, which I developed in particular for the Edmund Hillary Fellowship, but it now has become a tool in terms of treaty training. And I think that's the other area when I think about trying to change a system, is that you need tools. And so this is a particular tool that, you know, it's just a free download off our website, because that answers another thing about scaling up. Like, how do we reach those who are trying to do this work within their own organizations, but the organizations don't want to support treaty training, or there's not enough of them to go somewhere. So how can we create tools where individuals can be, you know, like, I guess, points of change within their communities as well. So I guess there's different ways that I kind of come to this work, through programs, developing programs, targeting audiences. And this other part is really of creating tools. And this year, because of the treaty principles bill coming through, we're looking at what tools do Pacific people need to understand Te Tiriti. What tools do we need now to look at Māori Crown relations, so that, I guess, we don't have to, having worked with some government ministries, and just, it's like looking into a cupboard where there are so many tools already that are just unused. So I think that that's the area that I'm kind of keen on, is how do we get some of those tools released? How do we disseminate them so anyone who's interested in this work can pick up one of these little toolkits, and I guess be part of that solution? And how do we collectivize that energy? To me, there are some questions in there, and that's why I guess these panels where we kind of get to meet and discuss this is so valuable. So thanks for that, and I'll hand you back to Anjum.
Oh, brilliant. Under time. But please do pop your questions in the chat, everyone. We'd love to give these people a chance to speak to the issues that you're really concerned about at the moment. I'm going to go on to our next speaker. Dr. Arama Rata belongs to Ngā Ruahine, Taranaki and Ngāti Maniapoto. She is co-director of Te Kuaka, a research and advocacy group promoting independent progressive foreign policy for Aotearoa, New Zealand, and works as an independent researcher focused on anti-racism, anti-imperialism, and liberatory pedagogies. So, Arama, thank you, and over to you.
Oh, kia ora tātou. Thanks very much, Anjum, and your team for the invitation to speak with you all today. There's some familiar faces on the call, so nice to see you, and lots of new faces as well, so kia ora tātou. As you mentioned, I work with Te Kuaka, and our work there is around progressive foreign policy, and you mentioned that I'm a researcher as well, and some of the projects I'm on include a project called Wero, which is different to the one you've just heard about, stands for Working to End Racial Oppression. Shout out to my Wero colleagues. I think I saw Kyle, Joanna, Moy, and possibly that's our Jan. It could be another Jan. So kia ora to you. Thanks for jumping on the call. I didn't tell them about it, but they somehow found out about this call today. And we look at the ways in which racism is produced and reproduced, and the costs of racism on society, as well as ways in which to intervene in racism. I'm also on a project called Riri, which is research to interrupt racism and inequities, and that's run out of Auckland University with the likes of Donna Cormack, Sarah Jane Payne, Hauparangi Reid, and I've been doing a project called E Hika, or Te Kaunoti Heke Hika, and I think I saw some people who have engaged with that project on the call as well, and that's around raising conscientization, or raising consciousness and awareness towards constitutional transformation. So those are, a few of the projects that I'm part of, and that last one, E Hika, I'm on with Matariki, Erin Matariki Ka, who I believe is part of your network, so lovely to see all those connections. But what I wanted to focus on today is something new that we've been working on, and really this is a response to the context that we're currently in. So I just want to acknowledge that we're currently under a government that is waging an all-out legislative assault on people and planet, including Māori people, including other communities of colour, including welfare recipients, including disabled whānau. The list goes on. And undermining our treaty rights is also an assault on our environment, because we know that Te Tiriti doesn't just protect people, but it actually protects our planet, our atua as well, from extractivism, from the ravages of capitalism. So in that kind of context, and actually it's not just a kind of hostile government, but through that hostile government, we're also seeing the erosion of all of the kind of supports we have in anti-racism. So the latest HRC appointments, for example, are really concerning, extremely concerning. So it's not just the government, but it's going to reach out into the whole kind of sector. So this is a really worrying time. And so, and finally, just want to mention as well that we've also, we're all watching this live streamed genocide taking place in Gaza, and now we see the onset of a full-scale war at this point on Lebanon. And so what happened at the start of the genocide was that we saw people take to the streets in huge numbers, and there was always a very high potential and sometimes expression of violence on the streets. And so we formed a group called Kaiawhina. This is a group focused on community care, and there we are in our green vests. And when it comes to the ways in which we think about change, there are ways in which we can kind of work within systems to affect change. But we know that whenever we make any kind of reforms, they can very easily be rolled back. And we also know that the greatest changes that we've made in society against racism, against colonialism, have happened through more direct action, including protest action. And protest, of course, is vital to functioning and healthy democracy. And so the way in which we are working as Kaiawhina doing community care is not to lead protests or organise protests, but instead to provide community safety at protest events and other forms, other events in which people are at risk. And we work alongside Tamaki street medics as well, who do first aid because obviously there's like a lot of hazards when you do huge rallies and marches. In fact, any public gathering, there's a potential for people to need medical help, and so we work alongside the Tamaki street medics to care for our community. And I'll shout out to Janfrey Wackham, who I saw on the call as well, who's a Palestine liberation advocate, I should say, who's been working in this area for many decades. So what should I say about Kaiawhina? As I said, we're kind of like a third-party community care group, so we don't organise actions, but we provide community safety, but we also provide education. So when people contact us to say that they would like our support, we'll find out, what it is, what their plan is, what their safety plan is, and we'll teach them about ways to make their actions and events both effective, but also safe. And all of us are volunteers. We kind of came together from lots of different movements, so environmental movements, land protection movements, people who had been working in the area of protecting trans community, Protect Pūtiki, and many other kind of streams flowed together to create this group. We've probably done, I would estimate, around about 80 to potentially even 100 events in the last year, including all of the Palestine rallies and marches in Tamaki, heaps of SNAP actions taking place at different locations with specific targets. There's a photo of us, I think the top right photo is us at the March for Nature. We provide marshalling at the Pride Rally, many climate strikes. We have offered, sometimes we'll see an event that we see a potential for risk, and so we'll contact the organisers, and so that's happened with some high profile international human rights speakers that have visited. And recently we were asked to, through our relationships that we've built through the Palestine protest actions, we were recently contacted when a Muslim school in Auckland was having a gala, and they'd just received terrorist threats, and so we were on the ground there to provide just to be visible and try to provide a sense of safety for the community as well. We do have to, of course, be very careful about our capabilities and what we're able to do. Like, there's not much that we would be able to do with the if a live, like an active shooter was on the grounds or anything like that. But we do have an incredible set of skills that we can draw on. Some of our people come from the anti-fascist organising space as well, so we have a very good ability to recognise agitators. and a range of skills that we employ to deal with agitators as well. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that example as one way where I guess myself as a scholar is working kind of at the intersection of like theory and knowledge, and that we know from academic spaces and research, and working with activists on the ground. And part of what I do is try to channel funding into community groups as well, and provide education, because there's this amazing conscientization that can occur through direct action, but requires as well opportunities to reflect on what you're learning on the street to deepen your understanding, and that then allows you to do even more effective organising in future. So I think that's all I need to say. I think I've stayed under my 10 minutes. Kia ora.
Oh, kia ora. Thank you. Wonderful panelists today, keeping to time. Great. So I would like to now introduce our third panelist, and thank you. I see a question in the chat. Please feel free to enter in any questions. So Bianca Johanson, widely known as B, serves as the tunu whakaaro of Manaaki Rangatahi, Aotearoa's only collective focused on youth housing and homelessness. With nearly 30 years of experience in social and community development, B also brings her skills as a healer to her work. She is a social impact disruptor, fiercely committed to transforming the youth homelessness system while driving the decolonisation and re-indigenisation of systems throughout Aotearoa. B finds her greatest joy at the beach, can confirm, having been at the beach with B. And with her mokopuna in contributing to kaupapa that aim to create lasting world-changing impact. B's also a member of our SASS group. So I will hand over to you, B, and get the slides up.
Kia ora. Mauri ora ki a koutou, nā mihi nui. Ko waio, ko B. Johansson tōku ingoa. He iri ahau no hokianga whakapau karakia kia manako here kino, no te raro me Ngāti Kuri nā iwi. So I'm B. It's awesome to be here in a SASS webinar talking about addressing racism and bias, and just want to mihi to the other two amazing wahine speakers today. Yes, so Manaaki Rangatahi. Manaaki Rangatahi is a kaupapa that I am the kaitiaki of, that I'm a part of, and we exist to prevent and end youth homelessness in Aotearoa. So how we actually do that is definitely through a systems change kaupapa. We're looking at smashing down the system that is and creating a new system, basically. And we do that through collective impact and collective action. So working kind of throughout Aotearoa at the moment, we have Manaaki Rangatahi Rōpū. We started out in Tāmaki, we're up north in Kaikōrero, Whangarei, in the Waikato. It's going really well in the Waikato, in Wellington and in Napier. So we're kind of spreading all over the place. And when I say we're spreading, it's the model of collective impact and the model of Manaaki Rangatahi. We have been able to support in opening the first kaupapa Māori youth housing. We've been able to smash up some systems and really challenge our kawanatanga, our government, over so many things. But we definitely believe in what is good for Māori is good for the world, for everybody. So we actually invite in anybody. We are a kaupapa Māori rōpū, but what we want to do is encourage anybody, even government ministries, everyone, to come and be a part of our kaupapa and what we're doing. And that's kind of the only way that we're going to be able to smash up the old systems and create new ones. In terms of how we work in a way that is anti-oppressive and anti-racist, is that we are often challenging the intersection between race and homelessness and rangatahi. So for many of our rangatahi, they actually face discrimination mainly based on race all the time throughout the whole system. So that's all the way through to, you know, trying to get funding, money, just to survive and live, right through to getting a home. And I suppose many people are aware of how much discrimination is out there when you're trying to find somewhere to live, and you don't have the funds to buy your own home, that you have to rent, and our rangatahi face discrimination all throughout the system. Manaaki Rangatahi is in that space of working with ministries and ministers, and we often have those really courageous conversations about white privilege, white supremacy, and the impacts of colonisation. And for us, when we talk about homelessness and housing, we're talking about homelessness and housing when it comes to legacies of colonisation. So for us, legacies of colonisation is about homelessness and houselessness started when we were moved off a lot of our whenua. So many of our rangatahi have intergenerational and entrenched intergenerational poverty and houselessness and homelessness because of those legacies that were left to us through colonisation. But we really believe as a rōpū that if we have Māori values to address a lot of the discrimination, the racism bias that at the government level. So as a rōpū, try to indigenize every space that we go into and decolonise. So as a rōpū and as a collective, we are often not wanting to speak in the traditional sense of how groups and collectives get together. So instead of talking about being, say for instance, we have a board, we've changed that, we've indigenised the name of that board. So we've gone along and indigenised a lot of our processes as we go. And of course, that doesn't come without a lot of tensions and kickback, because people are used to doing things the way they're used to doing things. But we truly believe in order for there to be healing for our rangatahi in a lot of our housing spaces, that we do have to re-indigenise and rename things and do everything within Māori values. Otherwise, it's really not going to work for our rangatahi, and it's not going to work for our rōpū in terms of where we're wanting to go in creating new systems. So yeah, that's a lot of the mahi of Manaaki Rangatahi, and we just encourage anybody throughout Aotearoa, if people want to get involved and they want to have a Manaaki Rangatahi that in the area and look at youth housing and youth homelessness and addressing it, yeah, to get in touch with us. I'm looking at all these cool pictures that Anjum's putting up, and they're just from all of our activation events. So we do a lot of kind of radical activation. I'm here currently at Corbyn's Arts Estate, and we are preparing for World Homeless Day, which is on the 10th of October. And we often do some form of radical activation. And so our radical activation event is an arts installation. And we're having two events, one at QES in Māngere on the 10th of October. So no maharamai if you'd like to come along to that. We're also having another amazing activation event in the Waikato, and that's going to be right in the middle of the town, right opposite the Novotel. So if you'd like to come and be a part of it and listen to how you can support and help with preventing and ending youth homelessness. And we do have a really, really crazy dream, and that dream is that we do want to end youth homelessness, and we want to leave Aotearoa with no youth homelessness. So here you can see some of our amazing rōpū. You've got a picture there with Marama Davidson and Pania Newton and the wonderful Mahera Maihe, who runs the first kaupapa Māori housing out there in South Auckland, and some of our other whānau members of Manaaki Rangatahi. And it's just, yeah, just we do really cool mahi together. But if we don't do it together and we don't have collective impact to address very entrenched racist colonial systems, very, very hard to move the dial on anything. So yeah, we dream of an Aotearoa with no youth homelessness. We want to leave no youth homelessness for our mokopuna as a legacy. And we like to share the model of Manaaki Rangatahi throughout the country. So anybody who's interested, please do let us know. I'm just really keen to answer any questions. If you have any pātai for us, or you'd just like to know more about preventing and ending youth homelessness, please do ask in the chat, ask away, anything at all. Kia ora.
Oh, kia ora, B. Thank you for that, all you wonderful people that are doing great work in communities. So the floor is now open for questions, and I did want to acknowledge some of our other SASS members who are here on the call today. I can see Jade and Lautalia, and I'm not sure if anyone else is here, but definitely do a hand wave. Because these women are all really amazing, and when we all get together, it's magic, I can assure you, as well as a lot of deep conversation, challenging each other, which we need to do, and figuring things out. So I see there's one question in the chat for you, Arama, so I'll start with that, which is, sorry, what are the key active strategies of Kai Awhina in promoting safety at events?
Yeah, so it ranges from a lot of different things, some of them quite benign. So things like doing safety briefings around potential hazards on the route that the march might be taking, things like reminding people about sunblock and shade, water, and consuming lollies if the energy levels are low. So from those types of things to the more serious threats to people as they do their events. So as I mentioned, protest is a really important way in which people can express themselves and demand the changes that they want to see. But some of the more serious consequences that can result from organising these types of actions and participating in them are the violence that one might be exposed to from agitators, the violence that one might be exposed to from the police. So, you know, resulting in lifelong injuries is not unheard of from the types of police violence that you might see at a protest. And we've seen, you know, that in the last year as well. And also the potential of arrest. So, you know, people might even kind of think that it's a courageous thing to do and it's brave to put yourself on the line and for that to result in an arrest, but people are not always aware of the kind of lifelong consequences that might follow from that. So it's all very well and good when people are aware and they're making the conscious decision, but we don't want people at events inadvertently being arrested without understanding the consequences of that. So a lot of our work in the last year has been around de-escalation. So where there's a potential for violence, this ranges from having good comms amongst our marshals throughout the space and identifying agitators early and having ways in which we can get our team in between the agitator and the community that they're trying to antagonize. And given the extremely intense emotions that we're seeing from communities that are experiencing a genocide, it's perfectly natural for those communities to want to respond when they see people turn up shouting really just horrific, violent things at them. And so putting our team in between to de-escalate people. We developed all sorts of innovative strategy. One was our massive watermelon banner. So we had a agitator who was turning up week on week, and we would just put this huge watermelon banner in front of them. Yeah, just there's all sorts of different kind of strategies that we would use, but we're also very clear that, you know, we're not the police, we're not even security, so we have no legitimate use of force. And so we would also make sure we were taking care of our own team by letting them, making sure that they understood that we're there to try to prevent violence, but once it breaks out, then we are to obviously not try and put ourselves in harm's way in those types of instances. So yeah, preventing that type of violence and arrest, we only turn up to events where we understand what the plan is and what's happening, and so we'll speak to the organisers about minimising those types of eventualities, and then on the day just doing our best to de-escalate, to avoid those types of situations, and then also keeping ourselves safe if violence does break out.
Cool. Thanks, Arama. So Jade, thank you for your question in the chat, and thank you also for sending through all those links as people were talking. That was really helpful. Appreciate it. So Jade's question is, how might tangata tiriti lean in tautoko awhi support and be of service to and with tangata whenua during this challenging time / political term? So I'm going to go to Faumuina and then B and then Arama on this.
Thanks, Jade. It's a great question too. I think at this point in time, I think to think about where can I make the most difference for tangata whenua? You know, so in the framework that I've created, when it comes to the Islands of Doing, we ask what is the biggest hole in our waka? So what is the thing that we need to do that's of the highest priority? And given that there is, you know, that we are going into select committee, like how do we understand how to make public submissions? You know, how do we get behind in that area? And I think mobilizing people, you know, so we all know that, okay, you can go online and you can, you know, raise awareness, but in this, I think in this phase of what we're going through right now is how can we team up with people to, as tangata tiriti, and make sure that our voices are supporting those of tangata whenua, and you know, if we think about what are the capabilities that we might have on this waka, and what can we do to, I guess, amplify that. You know, if we talk about systems change and how do we stand up in there. And I was in Taranaki last year, and you know, and I think people from Taranaki they've a long time in peaceful protest, and they talked about finding the joy in protest as well. I think that's really important as well. I think, you know, which kind of protest do you want to be joining? Where are you going to feel safest? And I think it's with those who can still do the mahi, but also bring that part of joy. And, you know, for me, I'm a Samoan girl, you know, got good humor, you know, it's like, how can I bring my funny Samoan girl to this arena that actually might help activate others to come out and support tangata whenua. So, you know, it's being more of ourselves, but ourselves that are tangata tiriti. So I guess I'm not, hopefully that's a helpful answer, but I'll hand that back to you, Anjum.
Well, good. B, did you want to add anything?
Oh, kia ora whanau. It's a great question, and it's a question I do get asked as well. And I think it's about what I mentioned before, which is understanding your privilege in Aotearoa and understanding the context of what it means to be tangata tiriti. So I think that many people say that, but it's understanding what that is from your personal perspective as the person that you are culturally, that you are in your mahi. What does that actually mean, and what does it mean to honour te tiriti as tangata tiriti? And I think that once you can position yourself really firmly in what that means for you, then you're an amazing ally for tangata whenua. And I also think that not speaking for Māori is really important, that if Māori are not in the races, especially your professional political spaces, where are tangata whenua? Why aren't they here? Let's invite them into the room and have them speak about what matters to them, and let tangata whenua have a voice. That would be all from me. Kia ora.
Awesome. Arama, did you want to add anything?
Well, I think we've got some real experts on that topic on the call. People like, I see Alex and Kyle and Joanna, who do work with, in solidarity with Māori. So they're probably better placed than me to answer. I'll just mention something very quickly, and that is that, you know, a lot of the current challenges that we're facing that are kind of framed as Māori issues aren't really Māori issues. They're about all of us. And so working on this from a place of understanding that this is about our shared liberation is also powerful, I think. And then one practical thing you could do if you're in a position to be able to is, I know that Catherine Delahunty and others are trying to raise funds to support the hikoi, the national hikoi that will be happening against the Treaty Principles Bill. So if you're able to donate to that, that would be a very practical way to support.
Thanks, Arama. And I've just popped a couple of links in the chat. The Together for Te Tiriti website has some information that you can use in conversations, but also they're selling hoardings to pop on your fence. So that's a really simple and easy way to just publicly show your support. And the other is an event that is happening in Te Whanganui-a-Tara, Wellington, for Tangata Tiriti on the 12th of October. So if anyone has the capacity to attend that, I'll pop the link into the chat as well. I'm just going to ask one more question for all the panelists. And that is just think about a wish list. If there's something that you could have or that could be in place or that you'd like to see that people here could work on or support in any aspect of systems change. So yeah, please share with us. I'll start with you, B.
Kia ora. Sorry, what was the question again, Anjum?
It's just like a wish of your wish list of things. What's just one that you think would be really helpful in terms of supporting systems change that people here might be interested in?
One, sorry,
Yeah.
what thing? Like one thing that they can do to support system change? Oh, okay.
Yeah. What's
one wish list thing to support systems change? I think about the systems that you are involved in and how you can smash them up and challenge them and create new systems. One free of patriarchy, decolonized, anti-racist and anti-oppressive. And if you've got any land to give, then give it back.
Thanks.
Kia ora.
Always good for land back. Arama.
Yeah, nothing to add.
Okay, no, all good. Faumuina.
I guess my thing would be to ask the question of yourself, like, you know, wherever you might be doing things, like, where does that knowledge come from? You know, like, where does that framework come from? You know, just to find the roots of where our knowledge systems come from and work back from there. I think just a real curiosity. Be curious about what we learn and the roots of that. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really want to thank our panelists and the time that they've put in. We've really appreciated having them here. One more thanks is to our backroom IT support person, Storm, who has joined us today under some challenging circumstances, but he always does go above and beyond. So I really want to acknowledge the work that he's been doing in the background that you all are not seeing. So very quickly, here are the dates for our next 2 webinars, 23rd of October and 27th of November. Next one on overcoming funding and bureaucracy challenges, and then looking at innovation, experimentation and amplification. So that is us. Feel free to get in touch, and I can pop my email in the chat, but it's very easy, anjum@inclusiveaotearoa.nz, and you can always get through to us from our website. And if you want to contact any one of the speakers or anyone from the SASS group, feel free to do that. And we're working towards our next retreat in November, so we're really excited about this mahi and continuing to work on thinking about how we can support people working on systems change. So I will close with this karakia, and thank you everyone. Ka whakaaeria te tapu, kia wātia ai te ara, kia turuki whakataha ai, kia turuki whakataha ai, haumie, huie, taiki. Go well, everyone. And thank you for your time.